Have you ever felt overwhelmed with all that's going on in the world? Sometimes we don't realize that we can make a difference. My name is Debbie Van Grieken, and it is my hope to inspire you to take small steps towards social impact. Join us each week as we have conversations with those who have taken simple steps towards living a more sustainable and socially conscious lifestyle. If you want to make social impact, let's start small. The Small Steps podcast is proudly sponsored by Moya Shea Products. As a listener, enjoy 15% off your online purchase. Use code SMALLSTEPS15 at checkout. At Moya, we believe in people helping people. Supporting the local and global communities that help our organization succeed is very important to us. We apply a fair trade framework when purchasing raw materials, supporting farmers and families. Thinking global and acting local, Moya works with organizations to better the lives of children through education and fair trade. Are you looking for the best moisturizer for beautiful, healthy, glowing skin? Our Shea products are superb moisturizers and have exceptional healing properties for those suffering from skin issues. Check out these products and our wellness line at moyasheabutter.com. Welcome back to the Start Small podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Van Grieken, and today I'm excited to be joined by Kristina Browning. Kristina is a licensed realtor in Portland, Oregon, and a home functionality coach nationwide. Allergic to stagnation, she combines these two home-centric professions, producing an intellectual, uplifting podcast called Home, Space, and Reason, all about home functionality, design, and automation with a bit of history and psychology. Living in a home that doesn't support your passions can be draining and exhausting. How fulfilled we are can have a big impact on our daily life across all kinds of contexts: parenting, success, work, health. Kristina helps people find and purchase a home that supports their passions and values, and then helps them tweak it to function optimally. Her passion is to help people create a home that thrives not just for today, but for the long haul. She's also a wife and mother to a 10-year-old boy. Please welcome Kristina. Hi, Kristina. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, where in the world are you?
I am in Oregon City, Oregon, which is 20 minutes south of Portland. So Pacific Northwest, and we're happy to have sun today.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a little bit of sun today here in the Niagara region of Ontario, Canada, but we are expecting snow today.
Holy cow.
So
time to transition into the winter weather, eh?
Yes, and time to get cozy into our homes. So I'm so excited to talk to you today because, you know, I love my home. And in the winter, I just want to hibernate. So I'm really interested in everything you're going to talk about today. But just start by kind of explaining to us what a home functionality coach can do for us and what it kind of means.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when you think about a home organizer, I feel like that's one piece of a bigger puzzle. And so a lot of people, when they think of something to do with the home, they think of either a person that maybe remodels it, or they think of a person that sells one, or maybe they think of a person that fixes one, or they think of a person that organizes one. And I, through the years, have come to the determination that there are so many pieces to the puzzle. And if they're all not listened to or addressed, that your home can kind of have either unease or it can go to hell in a handbasket when things get real. Like if there's a death in the family, or if, you know, we have a pandemic. Things happen in life. And so if you've thought through each space really well, then I think it handles the lives of the people that are living there much more completely. And what I mean by that is home functionality is about the ability to identify sources of friction. So that's going to be different from your family than it is to my family, because every family is different. Dynamics are different. Tastes are different. Habits are different. The floor plan of the house needs to be addressed. If there's areas where there's bottlenecking, if there's areas where things are building up, junk piles are happening, all of that needs to be thought of, and whether that floor plan is a good fit for your family. Aesthetics, obviously, needs to be addressed. You can't live in a home and truly love it if you've not thought about how it feels aesthetically and if it appeals to you. Organization, I mentioned that earlier, is a piece to that puzzle. So are the important things easy to find? Are they where you need them to be so you could go to them in a moment's notice? And the ability to edit is another piece of that puzzle. So when you go out in the world and you find cute things, or you acquire because this one works better than your other one, if you're not actively keeping your things at a minimum, your home after 30 years can be very overwhelming. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we all know people in that situation. Sometimes it's our parents. And then the last one is automation, hacks, and habits. And that's really what we know about ourselves and how we're able to use technology and things that are super convenient, like smart homes, to help our house function more smoothly without, for example, my most favorite one is using my smart home with an app that's connected to my phone, and I use it to verbally add things to my grocery list.
Right.
And then it populates both on my phone and my husband's phone. And so my son also uses it. So I am able to go to the grocery store like once every week and a half, and I've got enough food and everything's in the house for all the menus that I've built for the whole week, and it's by voice. It's a long-term solution because it's not hard. So I think that's why that's the last piece of the puzzle, because you have to have something in order for it to be sustainable. It has to be something that feels easy and natural to your family.
So this really is like the big picture kind of thing. Like, making these small little tweaks can really improve our lifestyle and kind of give us the best version of ourselves. Kind of speak to that kind of psychology of it a bit, if you can.
Absolutely. Well, James Clear, I don't know if you're familiar with his book, but he writes about habits, and he talks about, 1%. If you can just improve 1%, you're going to be fantastic. I think of it in terms of your space. If you can figure out where your issues are, I use that really broadly, it might be that you loathe laundry. Let's think about why. Let's look at the lighting in that space. Let's look at the family habits around laundry and figure out where the bottlenecks are happening. And it could be in a habit. It could be in the aesthetics. It could be where the laundry room is located. And there's so many ways to slice that pie. And I think instead of being really preachy, I have said, I think it's important to ask the questions about the decisions you've made about your space and your reason. And that's really where my podcast came along, is it's asking your questions for you to sort of mentally chew on things. Why do I not love laundry? Or why is my kitchen counter always full of crap? Why is it accumulating here? Maybe the answer is not because our habits are terrible or our kitchen doesn't work. Maybe it's actually we haven't considered where we're going to put things in a mudroom scenario when we first walk in the door. So if there's not a place to handle the things when you walk in the door, they're going to end up in a secondary location. And that may be what drives you crazy. So it's really important to dissect what's happening and not point fingers and be...
Oh, well, because I really want to point fingers. So you were talking and I was thinking, Well, I can tell you why my counter is crazy, because my husband put stuff. So,
Valid.
That kind of
Valid.
leads into one of my questions, because what advice or encouragement would you have, or would you give clients who, have partners and they may have very different needs? For example, my husband is a collector and I'm a bit of a hobbyist, but I'm more of a minimalist. And then, we're having our own spaces, but combined spaces too. So what do you kind of suggest for couples and family members who are maybe in different, I guess, areas of?
Yeah, I feel like that's more typical than not. A lot of times opposites attract. I think having storage areas that are covered, so something with a door that flops down that then can be a workspace, so all the bits and bobs can be covered. That helps things to stay minimal, but would honor his or your tinkering or whatever it is that they're into, collecting, or a lot of times it's fun to incorporate collections into your aesthetic. So you can have a wall, for example, very orderly, clean and neat lines with a repetition of whatever it is you're collecting. So whether it's teacups, that can still be en masse without it just being all jammed onto one, small shelf. If you take your design into consideration, I think collections can be honored and be quite beautiful. And when you have a person that enjoys tinkering, let's say it's in a garage scenario, that space can honor the love of woodworking or the love of working on an automobile without just being blown up. So I think what's important is really looking at the other people who live under your roof and what their tendencies are, and then trying to tweak one baby step at a time and then revisit with them. Does this feel better? Is this working better? Does this feel good to you? Because if it's not something that's going, you have to get the buy-in for it to be long-term. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's going to fall apart. And so really, it's about tweaking, never ending tweaking, but always just hoping to hit that 1% better, that little thing that, that was the deal. We have a mudroom that is very small. And I tell you, it for the longest time was just a shoe explosion. And it took probably 6 different tries, different ideas on how to fix that. It's finally fixed, but it took many years of, well, let's try this. Well, why isn't this working? Well, let's try that. Well, why isn't that working? So I think you just have to kind of take at it like with a growth mindset. Let's take it like,
I'll tell you what worked for me. I had a shoe explosion situation too, because I have 5 sons. So what worked for me is I had them move out.
Well,
so now I only have that problem when they come home to visit. But that took many, many years, 20 years before they all started to move out. And I just got my last one out now. So,
oh my gosh, that's a big time.
So we're now experiencing that empty nest, which has been wonderful. And I'm finding that I'm enjoying, getting more organized and really taking a hard look at what I have in the house and getting rid of things that no longer serve us, which is great, especially for me, because then it helps me to love my space more when there's less in it. So
absolutely. You know what else? It's a beautiful gift to your children in the future, because if you're not assessing whether you're using, loving, needing all the things that you have in 30 years, and I use that big broad term because, that sometimes is the point where the parents have lived in the home for this big, long time. And suddenly we're moving parents into assisted living facilities, and all of the accumulation lands on the kids' shoulders. And so
Absolutely.
I did a whole podcast about managing sentimental items, because a lot of us have a lot of emotional attachment to things. And especially if they are things that our parents had kept for us and then passed down to us, it's really hard to say, I don't love this, or it's not serving me, when they maybe kept it for us for 40 years before giving it to us. So there's a lot going on there. How have you approached that? Have you had experiences where your folks or your partner's folks have given you things that they kept for a long time? And then what do you do with them?
Yeah, we're kind of at that stage now where our parents are, aging. They're in their early 80s now. And so we're going to have to deal with their stuff. And I'm not looking forward to that. As far as things that have been passed down to me, I try to use those items like for occasions. For example, I'm just getting into my Christmas decorating right now, and I've been given some things from grandparents and parents, and so I kind of bring those out seasonally, and then I store them.
That's great. Yeah,
and then I they're nice and labeled and put away. And then I don't have a lot of emotional attachment to a lot of things, so I'm not too concerned about passing them on. One of the issues I'm finding right now that I'm starting to try to deal with and want to actually get some input from my kids is I have, as I've been purging and going through, I have awards and drawings and artwork from them when they were growing up. So I'm like, okay, well, my children are now between the ages of 20 and 30, and my 30-year-old has two small, young boys, 3 and 2. And I'm like, do I give them a box of like stuff and say, here's all your awards back?
Good luck with that.
Do you want them? But then I don't want them to think that I don't cherish them. But I'm also at the point where, yeah, that artwork from when you were 6 doesn't hold the same feeling for me.
I have a suggestion for you. So as a gift to my husband, I took 2 boxes of trophies, medals, you name it, paper certificates, all his sports paraphernalia from when he was a kid. And I spent a couple of hours photographing it on I just took a white sheet, plain backgrounds. I built an entire coffee table book, ended up only being, I don't know, maybe 30 pages long, scanned in all of his childhood sports, individual shots, as well as the team shots, and made one book with the trophies and his sports pictures and everything, and gave that to him as a holiday gift.
Oh, that sounds so great. Like that.
So,
And I have had kind of similar thoughts about that, because as I'm going through all the pictures as well, I have a lot of pictures where, there's the 7 of us, the 5 kids, my husband and I, and then I have a lot of individual pictures of them as well. And I'm like, well, it would be nice to just give each boy their own kind of book with exactly that, things that were just for them. And then we have our family albums that, everybody can kind of share. But that's a really great idea. I love that. But let me just ask you, because these are some great tips you're giving. So like, what other kinds of things, like there's got to be some big mistakes that people are making that are causing them to kind of feel overwhelmed or depressed, or really just not loving their space or feeling heavy. I've always felt like, I'll tell you actually why it was so important to me. So I remember having young kids during 9/11, and I had just gotten off of a plane. I literally had landed in Toronto airport and had drove an hour home and saw my kids, turned on the news, and 9/11 happened. So, of course, the media, like they it's so graphic. Everything is, they're playing everything. And for, that first week for sure, I don't think I left the TV. I mean, I was just glued to it. And it really was a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and dread and fear of what was happening. Like at that time, we just didn't even know what was going on. I remember my friends saying, "Oh my gosh, World War III is happening." And for those people who kind of like myself, who went through that, our homes became our safe haven. So I really kind of spent this time really nurturing my space because I wanted to feel safe. I wanted my kids to feel safe, that when they came home, this was their place, that they didn't have to worry about the outside world. We were home, we were together, we were safe. So I know a lot of people, that can get overwhelming, and, it starts off that way, and then we make these mistakes. So what are some of the things that people are doing so that when they come home, they're not actually feeling that they're getting their, all that from outside, maybe a workplace or a friend's house or something else, but not actually getting it from their own house?
I honestly believe that a lot of it comes with the purchasing, the act of purchasing. I am a big fan of dual or triple purpose things. So from decorations to coffee tables that might have storage inside and or also lift up to become a work desktop situation. There's so much out there in the world nowadays that can handle multiple scenarios, that you don't have to buy 3 pieces or 3 items to accomplish the same stuff, which creates less items cumulatively in your home. And it really does simplify. I think when we think of, especially in America, when we think of a holiday, so much of what's on social media and so much of what you see celebrated on television is explosions of decorations. And then you have to store that. And if you're making a bell-shaped cake because it's Christmas, you've got an additional cake plate. So that can happen and seep into your kitchen storage as well. And when you multiply that out times an entire year and every holiday that you might celebrate in your own home, it can add up to a lot of stuff. And if you're not actively getting rid of things at the same rate that you're accumulating things, you're on a path that's not going to lead to anything good. I find that people list overwhelm as the top word when they don't know how else to describe their spaces. Like a lot of times they'll say, I don't even want to open my cupboards. I just know that I'm overwhelmed and I don't have my sanity anymore. And so it's really about breaking down the bits and pieces of what's happening in a home, in a space, into such tiny bite-sized morsels that you can take that one step. You can say, I'm just going to clean out this drawer. I'm going to do one drawer and I'm going to figure out what I love and if I'm going to use it. And am I just holding on to it because I loved it when I bought it? Truthfully, there's probably nothing in your house that you don't like. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought it to begin with, or you wouldn't have ended up with it to begin with. So the question is never, do I like this thing? It's, am I using it now? And is it serving me repeatedly? I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, because I think too, like you say, obviously we liked it when we brought it in, but maybe it's no longer serving a purpose for us anymore. And it's time to let it go and be grateful for that. I know that Marie Kondo always says, be grateful for what it served and now let it go. And I love that because there's been things in my house that at the time I got great pleasure from it, having it, made things easier with raising 5 kids or whatever, but now I don't need that. And so maybe it's time to pass that on, donate it. We're all about the circular economy. So making sure that the end of life of a product, I look at that when I bring stuff into the house now. What am I going to do with it when it no longer serves a purpose for me? Is there enough life left that it's going to serve a purpose for someone else that I can donate it? Or is it going to be recyclable that I can, take it apart and recycle it properly? So these are the things that we have to start asking ourselves.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you have the podcast. It's called Space and Reason. So what can people...
Home Space and Reason.
Home Space and Reason.
Yes.
And what can people expect to learn from you when they're listening to that?
Honestly, it's very specific. Each episode is very specific to a topic. So, for example, episode 24 is just about knobs, pulls, and handles. So when I say I geek out on all things home related, I'm not kidding. So there's so much to think about when you're either building new or you're going in and restoring a home, or you're just not maybe particularly happy with your house and it's a fun thing to geek out on with me. Things to think about, the grips and the finishes and how they function as you age and what's better and more accessible for people as far as a handle versus a knob. It's all really, I'm a details person. So it's all really interesting to sort of explore those things. And so these episodes go deep into each particular topic. I've got one, for example, that's just about great curb appeal. I've got another one that's just about bedrooms. I've got one that's just about entryways. And so I try to make sure that each one is very clear about what we're going to talk about. And that way you can also go back in the future when you're like, you know what? I had my entryway on my list for 2023. I'm going to tackle it once and for all. I'm going to love it. Finally, it's going to be highly functional. Maybe that you can go back and listen to that one entryway episode, and that can launch you into the questions that you need to ask yourself so that you can address your family, your floor plan, and the functionality of that particular space with open eyes and an open mind. I love when people can give me all the reasons why they wish they would have done something different, because that makes me feel when I'm going into that project that these are mistakes that I can learn from other people, and hopefully I won't make those same mistakes. So I think it's a gift to be able to listen to someone who's discovered things that work or don't work, and who can sort of give you a heads up or a little ping that helps you to really think, yeah, how do we use this space? And when our family comes in, where does stuff land? So I try to really go deep into the details and the questions for the spaces, and each episode is specific to either a space or an experience. Like one of them is just about hardwoods, laminate, carpet, or vinyl.
Okay.
People might be thinking about, replacing their flooring, and these episodes are questions, really. They're not saying one is better than another, but they're saying, is this a high traffic area? Is it? Do you have an area where you want carpet and then you want flooring, and does a table need to go there so that the hardwood and the carpet would divide that table, and so the table can no longer go there? It's thinking things through so that you're avoiding mistakes or costly errors that you wished you would have thought of beforehand. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. People would ask me questions, and I would say, gosh, how much time do you have? And then I thought, it's probably better that I just do these episodes and address each of these topics individually so that they can be revisited. I don't have to be long-winded in a conversation. I can just be like, all of this lives on episode 5,
right,
or, the space that doesn't get used. Let's just talk about that.
And you have a few different services. I know you're actually a real estate agent as well. And you do offer coaching for individuals, and you do that virtually as well as in person, obviously, when it's possible. So just tell us a little bit about the services that you provide and how people can contact you if they want to work with you.
Yeah, so I love houses, all things houses. And as a realtor, I would go into spaces with my clients and they would say, "Well, I'm not really sure what I would do with this space." And then I was like, I need to start staging the homes that I'm listing so that people understand how spaces can be used to their best and highest potential. And sometimes that includes flex spaces. So, this space could be used as a Peloton workout space and in conjunction, maybe a secondary home office. And so I tried to start it by incorporating staging into my listings. And then I had clients coming to me saying, I really want to buy a house, but I'm not particularly good at envisioning how my things would exist in that space. So we would love for you to be our realtor on shopping. So that's really how the home functionality coach concept came into play, is that I would have this dialogue with my clients, both buyers and sellers, saying, I need help envisioning how this will work for us, or how my things would work in this space, or this space feels awkward. What would you do here? So that's kind of how it evolved. And really, it boils down to functionality. So I trademarked the home functionality coach term, and then proceeded to be able to open up the doors to help people no matter where they were. I've even got some clients in England, and so wow. It's a hoot to hear how people's language is different across the globe. They may call something one thing and we call it another. So it's so fun to meet people from everywhere. But I've even been gifted as a housewarming gift before. I've had parents call and say, I don't know what to get my son or daughter. They're moving into their first house. I'd love to gift them a session with you to get. Awesome. Yeah, it's a fun, very useful tool, and it's. I think it's a really fun and good idea. So
we're going to have all of the links in our show notes, but just tell us quickly what your website is for people to look you up.
Yeah, you bet. It's spaceandreason.com, just how it sounds.
Awesome. And before we go, I really want to leave with some practical small tips where we talk about small steps that we can take. We're all about sustainability. We really like to encourage people to minimize, buy less, but use the stuff that they have in a more functional way. Share with us, if you can, some great tips on either how to declutter or how to just improve their space. And maybe things that you're personally doing as well to help kind of live a simpler, more functional lifestyle.
Yeah, one of my favorite tricks is I use a Facebook page called Buy Nothing. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but it's so helpful to be able to gift things forward so that it's not going into a landfill or, to one of the other places where you can, I will not name them, but where you can drop off your stuff. I think it's wonderfully fulfilling to know that this thing that no longer serves you is going to be useful to someone that raised their hand and said, oh, I just need, that thing just broke in my house and I need one of those, whether it's a potato peeler or whatever it is. I think it's such a good feeling to think about moving things on from your home in that way, because then you're not literally throwing it away. Another thing I love is if you've had something for a really long time and there's great value in it, is being able to take the time to sell that thing and taking the money from it and putting it to a good cause. That could be your child's college education fund, or maybe it's a charity that's dear to your heart. And that way, the time that you spent holding on to that, loving that thing, collecting that thing is still being honored in an emotional way, with the money that you get from it is being paid forward into something lovely.
That's great. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Kristina, for taking the time today. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm already looking at a couple of trouble spots that I have in my basement, for one. Where it's just kind of become, the boys have put exercise equipment down there and things. And I don't go down there very often, but I think that I'm going to spend some time this weekend and really get that place a little bit more functional for myself.
Well, I tell you what, that's important that you said that, because when a space feels good and functions well, you tend to use it or go in it more often. So exactly. I think that's fantastic.
For sure. Well, thanks so much. And I look forward to talking with you again soon. Maybe we can touch base. And if any of our listeners have some questions that they want to discuss further, definitely this is an area where I'm really enjoying myself getting into, just with cutting things down and cutting things out of my life. It's just been freeing. And I think a lot of people just need that feeling now of being a little lighter and not being so heavy. When they come into their home, they should feel at peace. And I think that your services are definitely something that can really help a lot of people. So I look forward to it. I encourage everyone to catch the podcast and see what Kristina's up to.
Yeah, if the podcast is Home Space and Reason, but if that's not really your cup of tea, my handle is Space and Reason on Instagram, and Home Space and Reason if you're on TikTok. So some version of Space and Reason pretty much is where I'm at on all the different platforms. So I think that's important for dialogue too, especially if someone has a good idea. I mean, throw it up there, tag me, and we can all learn and grow and geek out together.
That's awesome. Definitely all of those handles will be in our show notes. So make sure you click on that and follow Kristina. Thanks again so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. I've really enjoyed our talk.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for having me.
Great. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Start Small. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found a small step you can take today. Make sure you share it with a friend. And if you have not done so yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and if you are enjoying this podcast, consider taking a moment and leaving us an honest review in your Apple podcasting app so more people can be inspired to take small steps towards social impact.